questions right there.
Okay, friends, tell me who's on, tell me who you are, and then we're gonna send out a gift to some lucky person.
We'll do a drawing.
All right, so today we're going to talk about triglycerides.
Hey Kathy, hey Skylar, I haven't seen you forever, friend. Where have you been?
And triglycerides are typically part of the 1950s
Lipid panel. And I say
the 1950s because
the lipid panel that we get, which is
triglycerides, LDL, HDL,
this was literally invented in the 1950s.
and so there is a much better,
Much newer lab that we can do.
called an NMR. And the NMR, as we've
Discussed in other videos,
will take the LDLs and the HDLs, and it now breaks them down into size,
size, and it will break them down into number.
and this is,
As a doctor, this is a lot more
telling of somebody's health.
when you have triglyceride,
LDL and HDL, not real,
informative. It does give us an idea
if somebody is having some metabolic issues,
because, as you'll see when we
start to cover the questions, we can start to look at components
and figure in
where and what and how and why and the things we can do. So the NMR, pretty much all the labs do it. You have LabCorp, Quest are the two biggies. They're the gorillas in the room. And so they do the NMR, and it tells us so much more information. But we're here to talk about triglycerides. And so the first question is, what is a triglyceride? And I don't want to dig too deep into this because we're not in a biochemistry room. We are not getting educated on how to, manipulate these in a form and it's not a cell phys class. So basically a triglyceride is three fats attached to a glycerol. And what a triglyceride does is it transports energy for us. And it also stores fats in adipose tissue. So when you have high triglycerides, you have a lot of potential energy, but it differs from cholesterol in that cholesterol helps you build cell walls and hormones. Triglycerides do not do that. Triglycerides give you energy. Your body breaks them down, pulls the fatty acids off, puts them into the Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain, and gives you ATP for energy. So that is what a triglyceride is, and that's what it does. It transports fats around and fatty acids around so you can use them for energy. Now this is pretty important. Your skeletal muscle does not need insulin to use these. And you want your triglycerides to be burned up in the skeletal muscle. So when you exercise, and if you exercise in a fasted state, you want your body to break down the fats in your stomach. Unless you are a professional athlete or an Olympic athlete, somebody who competes for money. The thing to start to think about, especially for age and longevity, is working out in a fasted state.
Hi, Cameron.
Because when you work out in a fasted state, what that does for you is that allows you to start to take your fats that are stored and break them down. And that's what we really want to do, is we want to get triglycerides and we want to bring them down, because you don't want a lot of triglycerides floating around in the bloodstream, because that's not healthy. And when we really want to look at this is, what is an optimal measure of triglycerides? So an optimal measure of triglycerides is 80, and whatever the unit is, I forget what the unit for triglycerides is, but 80 is where you want to be. And this is a fasting triglycerides. Once again, doesn't tell us a whole lot. So the next measure, when we want to start to think about, is this something that is hurting us, helping us, or is it just what it is? We have to start to look at what is the triglyceride to HDL ratio. And we want the triglyceride
Tony.
to HDL ratio to be as close to 1 as we can get. And so, you know, if you're at 1 on the triglycerides, your triglycerides are 80 and your HDLs are at 80. So triglycerides are 80 over HDLs, which are 80. That's a pretty healthy profile. The problem is
Michaela.
when we look at blood profiles of people, they are not coming back as a 1-to-1. Most people will have a triglyceride level in triple digits, because we're told, if you look at the standards, we're told in the standards that the triglycerides, as long as they're below 100 at or below 100, you're good. That means your HDLs have to be at 100. The highest my HDLs have ever been, I think, were 78. I think that's what I had on the paper that I looked at the other day. And that takes a tremendous amount of work. And it's not easy. You know, I'm all about, how do we make this
I'm glad to have you, Michaela.
easy and sustainable? Because as I was talking to another person just a little bit ago via text, because they were asking me questions, they asked, you know, have I had any patients do gut rehab, and what success did I have? So I've gone through all the successful cases that I've had and what we've done. And then they asked, then I asked them, I said, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, it sucks. I have cut out everything and I'm doing all of this and it's just a burden. How long do you think you're going to stick with that? I mean, truly. And so it's not about changing your lifestyle so drastically, unless your lifestyle is just total garbage. And I have yet to see anybody's lifestyle that is total garbage. Generally have a couple areas that are great and a couple areas that need work. And that's where we start to tweak those things. And so triglyceride to HDL level, when is it bad? So if your triglycerides are 100 and your HDLs are 50, so this is basically a 2x. Anytime your ratio is 2 times or better, or I should say 2 times or greater, that is not a good pattern to see. And that's when we start looking at metabolic syndrome issues. You have way too much triglyceride in your bloodstream, and now you are going down a path that you don't want to go down. And as the great Keith Mall said, if you are going down a path that you don't want to go down, why would you keep doing the things you're doing to keep going down that very same path? Because if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you got. So, how do we manipulate this? And triglycerides are actually pretty easily manipulated. Let's take a quick step back and let's talk about metabolic syndrome.
If you guys got questions, just type them up here and I'll ask.
So, metabolic syndrome, there are basically 5 criteria that you have to meet what is called, you don't have to have all 5. The more you have, the worse in shape you are. This is actually a function of how healthy you are. So the more criteria you have, the sicker you are, the more in danger you are, the more likely you're going to have some form of cardiovascular event. So if you have high blood pressure, high fasting, want to guess what the next one is, hun? High fasting.
I can't see what, high fasting?
What are the next 2 words?
Oh, high fasting blood sugar.
Bingo!
Your pen isn't, that purple doesn't show up well. I don't know if it's a glare or if it's, running out on you.
All right, switch. How's this?
Hey, Lexi.
How's that
Yeah,
one?
that one's good. Good to have you. If you guys have any questions, just comment here and I will say them out loud.
Now, I really want to hit this one for a second. I don't know that I've had a patient yet out of the hundreds to thousands of patients that I've had that actually knows what this is. Everybody assumes that this high fasting insulin is the same as this, and it is not.
Hi, Donna. Good to have you.
Insulin is a hormone inside your body that regulates blood sugar. If you have high fasting insulin, you are not going to get rid of body fat. You are metabolically inflexible, and it's gonna be work unless you address that. So high fasting insulin is its own measure. It is not a high fasting blood sugar. These are 2 different things. If your waist to hip ratio, if you are a male, is greater than 1, you have abdominal obesity. Anytime you have abdominal obesity, that is one of the markers of the 5 markers of metabolic syndrome. And these are the most common ones we see, and I'm forgetting one. What is the other one? The 5th, the markers of that. Excuse me for a second. Markers for, and it's always an easy one. Yeah. I need to make up an acronym. Too much fat on the waist, high blood pressure. Oh, yeah, the same thing we're talking about. Told you it was simple. And remember, it's always, if you don't feel comfortable asking your doctor a question.
Hi, Adam. Hi, Scott.
You probably need a new doctor, because I've said this before and I will say it again. Doctor, I believe, has its Latin root as in doctere, which means teacher. And if you can't ask your teacher a question, you will not have the answers that you need to take care of you. And that's what all of this is about. All of this is about putting the power in your hands for you to take care of yourself. Yes, ma'am?
You want me to read the comment to you?
Yes.
So we have a comment, I am insulin resistant due to polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Uh-huh.
My doctor started me on metformin to help with that and
Okay.
to hopefully bring my triglyceride level down.
Okay.
But the metformin makes them really sick.
Makes your stomach sick, upset. Okay. So, by law, I have to say that I will speak in generalities. And so when we look at something called PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, hormones are off. And when I know the hormones are off, most likely cholesterol.
Because cholesterol is good for you.
Most likely your cholesterol is off. If your cholesterol is off, you will not make good hormones, and your body is the ultimate worker. Shows up every day, has its tasks to do, and as long as you give the worker all of the materials that it needs to do its job, it does a fantastic job. When you don't give it what it needs, and let's say you eat fried foods. I love fried foods, but I'm going to pick on them for a second. Fried foods are generally fried in a polyunsaturated fat. A polyunsaturated fat, when used at high heat and fried in, starts to become a reactive oxygen species. And that oxidizes the already good things in us. Think about it this way, the body doesn't typically do things to harm itself.
Welcome, Lita.
Your liver will kick out somewhere between 80 to 85% of the cholesterol that it needs. And on top of that, every cell that you have, which is kind of ironic, other than the adrenal cells and the sex cells, they can produce their own cholesterol, which, like I said, is kind of ironic because your adrenals and your ovaries, testes, they need the cholesterol. So I'm not sure why God, the universe,
Welcome,
whatever
Marcy.
your belief system is, I don't know why they made us that way, but they did. Probably because I guess if you put the power to make cholesterol in the hands of the things that need the cholesterol, we'll probably overdo it. Hypothesis, total thinking off the cuff.
You're going to want to hear this one. So they said that their blood work came back good except triglycerides, which are tripled, and they also suggested the keto diet.
So we'll start to address that. So hold on, let me write that down so I come back to it. Blood work, good,
But there's a problem with blood work, isn't there? Because most of them aren't doing the right blood work.
Blood work is good, except trigs. Okay, so back to polycystic ovary disease. Liver produces 80 to 85% of this. Your lifestyle. Sorry, talking generalities. When I was 270 pounds, going through a divorce, going through a financial situation, going through all of these things, my mindset was not in a good place, kicking out lots of cortisol, making myself unhappy. You have to start to figure out what of the four pillars are off. Is your sleep off? That's very important. Is your nutrition off? And what we think is a healthy diet and what is actually a healthy diet are two different things, but they're not always so far apart that you can't do substitutions and change and still have the things that you like, just with a little healthier ingredients. So it's kind of like you can have a purse, since I'm talking to a female. Sorry for this is not a sexist statement, but
It kind of is.
we've made this analogy last time. If we're looking at a purse,
Guys like purses too, babe.
true, I don't. So if we're going to look at a purse, would you rather have a Coach, Louis Vuitton, Michael Kors, whatever else? Because the quality of these is supposed to be better, or do we want just any old handbag? And I don't want to rip or rail on any one brand, but whatever it is. So those things are supposed to matter, because you can take a Coach or a Louis Vuitton or a Michael Kors or something of that nature. You can take those back if there's something wrong with them. They'll clean them for free. They'll redo things for them, because they're meant to last. They're meant to be quality items. So you need quality fats in your blood. You want to consume quality fats. So this 20% that you consume is high quality, and the liver doesn't have to work. Plus, you don't want to stress the liver. The liver produces energy, and it filters. And if you've ever been overwhelmed, it's tax time. If you're a business owner, I got to get my taxes ready. I've got to have my bank statements done. The kids need X, Y, Z, and all these things start to weigh you down, and then you're like, yeah. If you've ever been overwhelmed, well, you can overwhelm the liver. You can eat so much crap that the liver has to just work on filtering. And then, well, lo and behold, gallstones, lo and behold, cramps, diarrhea, whatever. And then the body starts to say, hey, we're overloaded. Let's just start to pack this stuff away in fat. And if you're like me and you start to lose weight and you start to feel like crap, you're detoxing because your fat is dumping its contents into the bloodstream and you feel like crap. It happens. So,
Carla and Danny.
So PCOS is the cholesterol. That's one of the components of this. And so when I have patients with this, we start to address, what are your sleeping habits? How do we increase your sleep to where we can get you to at least 7.5 hours, plus or minus 30 minutes. That's kind of the standard. Next thing is nutrition. What kind of nutrition are you eating? And let's look at the things that you eat, and let's start to put good things in, because if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you got. We don't get high blood sugars and all of these things because we lack metformin in our system. And so we've really got to start to own those things that are our problems, and then we learn to deal with them. If you're Christian, we all have crosses to bear. We have to learn how to bear them as best we can. So those are the things that I start to look at. The third pillar, movement, exercise. People, throw out the television. If you get stuck on the iPad and you sit there and you look, if you're looking for time to exercise and you have an Apple product, look at your screen time. $5 says you have hours in there that you can use to help your body. I'm not saying never go onto Facebook and never do these things, but really take a look, a 50,000 foot view of your life, and look at the amount of time that you spend and try to get that time allocated to better things that help your body. That's movement. And last but not least is community. If you're in people that just drive you nuts. I love Jessica to death. She loves politics. And she
Well, I do my
goes in there and
diligence
she
and looks.
gets worked up over them, and that's okay. But then she tells me about them, and that's one of the things I had to cut out of my life because it kept me stressed to hear. And when you're stressed to hear and you can't do anything about it, you feel helpless and hopeless, raises cortisol levels, raises blood sugar, raises insulin. So you can ask Jess, first thing in the morning, very first thing I do, meditate
Don't talk to him.
and pray. So I do my meditation for 20 minutes, and I end it with, and it's a, what kind of meditation do you like? There's 1,000 different types. You can do a meta meditation, which is the, oh, I love myself, I am worthy, and I am this, that, and the other. There is the mindfulness meditation, which is the, oh, I can feel the breeze on my skin, and I can feel all this stuff, and being present in the present moment, counting your breaths and stuff like that. And then there's the manifesting types of meditations, which are the, I want to thank you, God, or the universe, for the idea of this regenerative farm and helping other people, because you would not have put that into me if I didn't deserve it or if I didn't want it and it wasn't going to happen. And then you smile and you start to work on those things. And that puts you in a totally different frame of mind. It brings the body down. It decreases heart rate variability. It allows you to calm down. And so that's the last bit of it. And really, you start to do those things, and in the beginning, you're like, this sucks. Then all of a sudden, well, it's not that bad. And, oh, hey, look at this. This has happened in my life, and this has happened in my life. And you start to see the synchronicities, as they call them. And then good things are happening. And life is great. It still throws you curveballs. You still have issues that you have to deal with, but it's a lot easier. And life isn't such a drag. And so you're not stressed. You don't raise cortisol. You don't have high blood sugar. You don't raise your insulin levels. You don't become insulin resistant. The easiest person to knock insulin resistance out of is the person who's sedentary. The hardest person to knock insulin resistance out of is the person that is like, if I go boo, and they go, that person that is just wound tighter than a 3-day clock, as my dad says. That person that's wound tighter than a 3-day clock, that's a whole lot of monkey mind that just needs a lot of work. So let's answer this other question. My blood work is good, except for my triglycerides. Well, I learned a long time ago to trust but verify. So I have a problem with the blanket statement that my blood work is good. There is a difference between what we consider good and what is optimal. And what is optimal for you is different than actually what is optimal for me. So let's take a peek at this and let's dig into some things. So, how do we get blood work? And how did we get the standards for blood work? I didn't get a book from God or the universe that says, this is what perfect blood work looks like. No, we had some genius nerd who loves to play with blood, looking at stuff and saying, hey, I found this. And then they had some other genius nerd say, well, is that good, normal, bad, optimal? And the other genius nerd goes, I don't know. And so they go to a statistician and they say, how do we quantify this? And the statistician says, well,
Hi, Dean.
what's optimal? And the one nerd says, I don't know. The other nerd says, I don't know. And the statistician says, well, I need some points to go off of. And they said, well, you know, we have all this blood work from the hospitals and from the Army, because they keep our blood, or they keep their blood and stuff like that. And so they go around and they say, let's plot for HDL. Let's say HDL. They say, hey, let's plot where all these findings we have, where they're at. Okay, so we got them all plotted. Now we want to take a look at this scattergram, and we want to find where 90% of the dots lay. Fair enough. If you're a turkey hunter, when you're putting in a new scope or a new rounds, you shoot it and you look at where the majority of your things lay, and then you know how to adjust your sights or whatnot. So same thing, same kind of principle here. We find out HDLs. What's good is anything greater than 50. What's optimal is we're starting to see we want things around the 80s, 70s to 80s. But for LabCorp, which is a good lab, and I use them a lot, and they only have the tools to work with that they basically create. So here's LabCorp, here's the 90th percentile, it's greater than 50, and then we'll give you 2 standard deviations above and below. Jessica, you work in a hospital. What kind of people come to see you?
Sick people.
So if our sample size,
Well, sick or unhealthy.
yes. So if our sample size, or sample shouldn't say size, if our sample group are people seeking health care because they're ill, you are now healthy or normal for a sick population. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to be there. So without seeing the numbers, I say, yeah, there's a great possibility that you're absolutely correct. But if you have one thing out of balance in a system network, how many times when in a system network that you have one thing out of balance does it never affect anything else? Very, very rarely. So there's something else probably there that needs to be looked at. But regardless.
And isn't the usual lab is just like a lipid profile, which is very generic,
Yeah.
and you can get a more specific test, which is the NMR.
Yeah, the
That
NMR.
We'll break it down even further.
Nuclear magnetic resonance. Typically it comes with an insulin resistance score.
And we have a lot of physicians' office call us and ask us what our patients are talking about when we
When
send
they
them
ask for an
to
NMR.
get an NMR.
We typically have to send patients with the requisition with the LabCorp test number so they know what to order. And then I typically sit down with the doctors and we have a discussion on what the prevailing, and I'm going to say prevailing, what the prevailing knowledge or wisdom is about those findings, because we don't know everything. There are things in lipids called discordance and concordance, and
Good morning, Susan.
typically metabolic syndrome has a lot to do with discordance, and so it's being able to not take one number and figure it out. It's going, Well, if we have problems with triglycerides, and we have abdominal obesity, and we have high blood pressure, and we have high triglycerides, we have 3 of the 5 things that say that you have metabolic syndrome, and this is where we need to go, because you're not processing, the patient is not processing the blood sugar well, and most likely has a high fasting insulin. So one question I would ask my doctor, if I had high triglycerides, next question is, what is my fasting insulin? Fasting insulin. The value you want to have, which is optimal right now for what we see, is between 3 to 4. 5 is in the yellow. Anything greater than 5, we want to start working on that. So that's the question that I would follow up, knowing that the triglycerides are high. And because the triglycerides are high, fasting blood sugar, does anybody know what optimal? Does anybody know what the fasting blood sugar numbers are optimally? Nurse Jazz.
Oh, I thought you were asking them.
Well, I am, but they can't answer me. So I will ask you.
Well, I say 80 or below.
So she's right on. She split the difference. The range is between 75 and 85. This is what they consider in the functional medicine realm, longevity realm. That's what they consider optimal. LabCorp says anything less than 126, less than or equal to 126 is not diabetic. Let me correct that. Say 125. Then up to 110 or greater than or equal to 110 to 124 equals pre-diabetic. And anything less than 110 to that 85, we've got issues, but it's early and you caught it. And now it's time to work on it. So that's blood sugar. And that's where we kind of start to go, because blood sugar is a proxy for insulin. Insulin is actually the thing we want to know about. Insulin causes all kinds of havoc in the body when it's not used properly. All right, so I love this test, by the way. That's the one I'm trying to manipulate on myself. So we have covered what is a triglyceride. It's a glycerol with 3 fats on it. It transports energy. Cholesterol is different than a triglyceride because it helps with the hormones and cell walls. We touched on what the optimal measure of a triglyceride is, and we touched on the HDL ratio, we touched on what is optimal, we touched on the bad pattern. So now, how do we modify our lifestyle to start to bring all of these things in? I may be talking about a specific thing when I talk about triglycerides, or I talk about HDLs or LDLs or LP little a or APB 100 or whatever. But it's all a system. You cannot pull one lever by itself. It's a spider web. So when you pull this lever, it tugs on this lever and it tugs on this lever.
Hi, Tracy.
They all move. So when you create a healthy lifestyle for yourself, you are pulling all these aspects in to yourself for a healthier lifestyle. So for me, and I have blood sugar issues, you know, I start out with prayer, I start out with meditation, we make our morning coffee, we're really doing
It
some,
makes me wonderful.
we are starting to really work on our microbiomes because we've done our tests and we see where we are lacking a few key species, and as we lack those species, doesn't matter what you do, if you don't have the little guys that are going to help you make the change, you can't make the change. And that's what all the new science is starting to vet out. So you can change the environment, you can change the soil, you can fertilize the soil, and they call it weeding, feeding, and seeding, or weeding, seeding, and feeding. And so you weed out the bad guys, and then you start to make the soil ready, and you seed it, and then you got to feed the good guys.
I
So,
watched a really cool video on that. But you have to be careful that you have to weed first before you seed.
yeah,
Otherwise, you can get a big problem.
yeah, you can really SIBO yourself up. So, strategies to modify. Let's talk about the 4 pillars again. I love these things because it's simple. And if you've ever used iProducts, even though I have issues working apps in them, working the iProducts is pretty simple. Coming from a Windows thing, they pretty much simplify things down, and that was a tenet that Steve Jobs had. The usability, the sustainability is in the simplicity. Now, getting to that, there's a whole lot of work. So, pillar number 1 is sleep. Why do we need sleep? We need sleep because that's when the body rebuilds, repairs, produces hormones, uses hormones. The lymphatics in the brain open up and you start to clean the brain out. Remember,
Specifically deep sleep.
yep, remember the issue with like Alzheimer's, dementia, and all those things, those are now being termed diabetes type 3. So with diabetes type 3, we want to be careful with that. And so sleep, you're looking for 7.5 hours plus or minus 30 minutes.
So she said, thank you for explaining that. Now she understands better. Her doctor didn't explain anything, just put her on metformin. And like, it won't let me see more. Let me see. Won't let me see more of her comment.
Well, happy to do that, and I love answering questions. I don't know if you can tell I really like doing this stuff. So if you have a question, feel free to post it, ask it.
Oh, and she said to do the keto diet. That was the rest of it. Her doctor didn't explain it very well. Just put her on metformin and said to do the keto diet.
Okay. Well, I want to circle around to that. So, sleep. 7.5 hours plus or minus 30 minutes for your metformin issue. And this is very interesting to me. When I was trying to deal with my blood sugar issues, I read something that said when I get 8 hours of sleep at night, at least 8 hours of sleep at night, it resensitizes my cells to insulin on par with, or even better than, metformin, berberine, or any of those drugs. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to bed at 10 or 11. I get up at 4 in the morning, I go to the gym, and so I'll quit going to the gym for a while. And then I started making sure, as soon as I woke up, stuck myself in the finger, did my reading, and sure enough, after about a week to 2 weeks, that started to actually pan out as true. And so I actually quit going to the gym totally for quite a while and tried to get everything set up so that I sleep well. There are no televisions in our room. We really try to stay off our devices. We read the 5 love languages, 365. What is that thing? It's not a devotional.
It's a couples. It actually is a couples devotional.
Couples devotional. So we read that every night, and that is in book form. And the question is why does it matter? If you're reading a book or if you're reading a screen, what's the difference?
Well, that is on many levels good.
Mm-hmm. But your eyes contain 4,000 specialized cells in them. And the only thing they pick up is blue light. And when they pick up the blue light, that is a signal to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, basically a little part of your brain, that, hey, it's daylight and it's time to get rolling. And that's why you're seeing all these devices now have night shift, a night whatever. Just avoid them. There's nothing that cannot wait until the morning. I'm 50 years old, and when I grew up, we didn't even have cell phones. There is nothing that cannot wait. So, with that being said, switching off your devices, and they typically say get away from your devices 1 to 1.5 hours before bed.
If you can't use blue blockers.
Yeah, use blue blockers. I actually have 2 pairs of blue blockers. If I have to sit on my computer at work, I wear these all the time. And they're just a glass lens, but they block out the blue light from my workstation. And my workstation is pretty obscene. Big monitors. I have a big monitor up front because I'm always watching videos and attending classes now virtually that I just like to kick back and watch it on a very large screen. It's easier. And so I wear these all the time, so I'm not getting bombarded with blue light all the time. Towards the end of the night, I think this is pretty cool, and I think when we build our house, I want this to happen, but there are lights that will change. And so in the beginning of the day, they stay high with blue light, and at the end of the day, they turn down to almost candlelight. And you know what? If you can do candles and you dig candles in your house, at nighttime, try to match what the outside is doing, and this keeps your circadian rhythm on track, and start to burn candles.
Make sure they're high quality, otherwise they're an endocrine disruptor.
Yeah, don't watch it. Don't have them smell. So those are just a couple of things. Turn off your devices. You've probably heard this 1,000 times, but you've heard it 1,000 times because it works.
Well, she says she does have sleep issues. It's been an issue for her. She works 2 full-time jobs and at one point was working 92 hours a week. She cut back their hours at one job starting this week because she's just wore out. My goodness, I would be wore out too.
That made me tired thinking about it. But sleep is something. Number 2, nutrition. the keto diet. We're going to circle back to the keto diet now. Ornish, keto, paleo, vegan, vegetarian, all of these diets. So let's put them all out here. There's a vegan. There's a vegetarian. There is a keto. Oh, I forgot carnivore. There is a carnivore. And there's a paleo. And then you have sad.
Standard American diet, and it's super, super sad.
Standard American diet. Any of these are better than this. There is absolutely no comparison. Anybody that has ever switched from whatever diet from the standard American diet, I don't care what it is, they have seen how bad the standard American diet is. With that being said, is vegan better than vegetarian? Is keto better than carnivore? Is paleo better than vegan? You are an N of one. She can eat more carbohydrates than I can eat. We can't have exactly the same things. We can have our main stuff, feed our microbiome most of the way, and then she can have little bits of, cracker, let's say. I can't. And I know this because of doing my DNA test, doing my blood sugars, checking this stuff out.
Well, in my biome, when we did my DNA test, I need more.
Yes. And so, this no moss, working 96 hours, you probably relied on this. Now, I am speaking in generalities. I am not your doctor. So, the standard American diet is not good for anybody. Why is that? It is high sugar. It is high trans fats. It is high, goodness, it's low in fiber.
High in sugar.
So, yep, and it's highly processed. Your body needs at least 40 grams of fiber a day, and if that number scares you and you think that it is a problem and that you get constipated, probably have a disturbed microbiome. 40 grams of fiber really isn't that much fiber. It's a world's more than what we normally get. The typical American, so we want to shoot for 40, and I generally, when I'm dealing with my patients, because they're usually getting between 8 and 12, if they jump to 40, they will get constipated because their microbiome isn't used to this. Over the course of several weeks, we change from 8 to 12 to 20 to 30 to 40, and we may even go slower if they start to exhibit those symptoms. And those symptoms being constipation and stuff like that.
Don't forget your water.
Absolutely. So what is, oh, I forgot Ornish on there too.
And Ornish is good for people that have problems with their cardiovascular system.
Yeah, if you're young and you're in your 20s and 30s and you've done a calcium score and it shows up, Ornish will help reverse that. That's the only diet that has been proven, double-blind, placebo, blah, blah, blah. That's the only diet that's been proven to do it. I've never done the Ornish diet. But let's address keto because this is all the rage right now. What's the purpose of keto? Keto's purpose is to control insulin. Keto allows the body to take a rest because we are putting into the body only fats and only fibrous carbohydrates typically, because we want to watch the carbs because it kicks it. If you're doing the nutrition and you're getting the sleep and you have good exercise, your tolerance for carbs goes up. Dr. Peter Attia, when he was doing endurance training and was working on bicycling and stuff like that, he's like the uber nerd. And he tracks all of this stuff. He has the blood lactate monitors. He was checking everything out on his body as he did it. He could go up to 600 to 700 grams of carbs a day and not drop out of ketosis. So you got to remember, depending on the amount of exercise and sleep and how metabolically flexible you are, depends on how much you can have in the carbohydrates and still be good to go. So keto's purpose is actually to control insulin. So I would say that as you're monitoring, so why did I do keto? I did keto because my insulin levels were stupid high. And so I started to do the NMR, watching my lipid levels, and I knew I wanted to control for insulin because my insulin was too high, my triglycerides were too high, my LDLs were too high. So I want to control insulin, and this is for several reasons. One is insulin scars the body. It's very anabolic. So if you have a lot of triglycerides and fats in your system, it'll help oxidize those faster, causing bigger issues. So once you get your insulin to within the window of 3 to 4, now we have to transfer from high fat, low carbohydrate to a higher fiber and not worry about the carbs so much. And this also helps balance hormones. So it's hormone balancing, it's insulin resting, high fat. Since it's high fat, it balances the hormones. It's insulin resting. And so that's what keto does. Actually, if you have seizures, a ketogenic diet actually helps control the seizures too. So beta hydroxybutyrate, I forget the other ketones, they all tend to have very good calming effects on the brain. You're 20% of the body's glucose. If you can shunt that to be so much better off in so many ways, it would take me another 3 hours. But that controls insulin. So the next, is this sustainable? Have you ever tried to do a ketogenic diet and sustain 60, 70, 80 grams of fat with 25 grams of carbs and 60 to 70 grams of protein? It's hard. It's a lot of work. And if our ancestors had to do that without being able to measure all this stuff, we'd be dead because they couldn't do it. And it really shouldn't be that hard. It's only because we muck up our systems with the standard American diet that we gotta tighten everything up so that we can balance these things back out. It's kind of like being in debt and earn more or save more to pay off. So then you got to really look at what it is you like up here. And so we typically we actually follow, oh yeah, I forgot the biggie, the Mediterranean diet. We actually follow more of a Mediterranean diet now because we eat lots of fibrous carbs, I personally shoot for 40 grams at a minimum. And that keeps everything going. I go to the bathroom, I have a bowel movement twice a day, and it's pretty regular. If you go online and look at the Bristol stool chart, we are talking about medicine and we are talking about health. So you look at the exhaust also. But if you look at the Bristol stool chart and you look at what you left in the toilet, you can kind of match up the two. And it tells you if you're inflamed, if you're not inflamed, if everything looks normal, if you're constipated. You know, it tells you all of these things, and then you start to figure out what you need to do to fix the process or the problem that you have. So fibrous carbs up to 40 grams. We eat lots of fish, pork, grass-fed pork, grass-fed beef, and we honestly have.
We eat lots of good fat.
We eat at home
We like to eat at home. I like to eat at
90%
home.
of the time. But when we go out to very nice places. And so, we save so much money by eating at home that we can go to the Ocean Air and eat seafood and fresh oysters and stuff like that. We can also go to Prime 47 because they have grass-fed beef and their chef uses real ingredients that are fresh that day. Because it matters. And that's the way we would cook if we were at home. Does it take time? Yeah. But the investment in time is worth it. So it takes a little bit of planning sometimes. Now we're so good at it because we've done it for several years that even if we didn't prep our foods, we can have something on the table in 30 to 45 minutes. And it's going to be healthy and it's not going to be junk food. So it's doable, but it's just learning something new. It requires change. So nutrition, you want good oils. Oils equals good fats equals oils. We use olive oil, we use avocado oil, we use grass-fed butter, we use
Be careful with your oils. All oils aren't the same, so even the good oils, you got to be careful. Make sure that they are organically grown and processed, and they are not watered down with corn oils or other low-quality oils and being sold
They
as
call
a
them-
good quality oil.
They call them the olive oil mafia because there's a group out of somewhere that has taken olive oil or margarine. But, so, good fats equals good oils. And honestly, if you give us your email address, I'll email you a
We eat lots of coconut oil.
covered clean out. Yeah, yes.
Coconut oil,
Oil,
just make sure it's good quality.
coconut oil,
Avocado oil actually is amazing in salad
Avocado.
dressing.
oil.
We make all of our own salad dressing.
Olive oil, coconut oil, ghee, and grass-fed butter.
And I'm going to
So-
put a plug in here for one of our favorite places, and we like to go to date night, and we go to Madison, have great coffee, and then we visit the Garlina Garlic Factory, which they have all kinds of amazing oils.
So do you know why we use the different oils? We use the different oils because they have different smoke points.
Actually, I'm not quite sure why it bounces right back, so I hope you guys are not missing out.
Well, this is all recorded. So these all have different low smoke point. Now, extra virgin olive oil is a high
Hey,
smoke point.
Michelle. Yes, have him watch it.
And so coconut oil is a high temperature cooking oil, as is avocado oil. Ghee is a high temperature oil. Grass-fed butter is a medium to low temperature cooking oil. And so that's why there are so many different ones. Typically, the more stuff they have in them, the lower the smoke point is and the quicker it oxidizes. And that's what you have to be careful of. But we use our olive oil, like she said, as a dressing. We put it in a little thing, and then we add all the little, if you go online and you type in good seasonings recipe, they tell you all the seasonings that go into, or that make a very good imitation good seasonings dressing. It's an Italian dressing. We add our own balsamic vinegar to it, and we will use a flavored oil, and that goes on our salads as a drizzle, and it is absolutely outstanding. Remember, herbs and spices are the third, I believe they're the third most nutrient dense food that we have. Number one are the organ meats. Number two
Cacao, isn't it?
is actually herbs and spices. Number three is
Cacao's up there somewhere.
chocolate.
He makes our own mayo, so if you like mayo, get rid of your Miracle Whip. Get a good quality mayo, but you can make your amazing mayo.
Oh yeah, go to our YouTube channel. Just look up Integrated Health of Indiana YouTube, and I think me making takes 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's amazing. And we use it as mayo. We use it as coleslaw base, and we use it for tartar sauce. It's delicious.
High quality protein. Why do I say high quality protein? Because you are what you eat, and you are what you eat ate. And if what you eat ate crappy stuff, so as I was discussing earlier, the higher the quality components you put into your body, the higher quality your body makes, the stronger you get. So that applies to the cow, the pig, the chicken, the shrimp, the salmon, all of that. And if you want a simple, so we're talking about triglycerides. How do you lower triglycerides? You know what? Snack on the smash fish. So if you snack on the smash fish, then you are putting good oils in there, and because it's a fat, your body doesn't have to, you don't crave and you won't eat sugars and crap like that. And you're also affecting your omega-3 content, which is anti-inflammatory. So here we're starting to stack those things in line. So these are salmon, mackerel.
Make sure these are all wild caught.
They spell mackerel. A-L. Anchovies.
Hi,
I
Bill.
tried anchovies. I'm going to have to mix them in with stuff. Anchovies, sardines. Make sure they're in like water or good olive oil, and make sure they have the bones in them. Great calcium, just is all good for you all the way around. And herring. Eliminate refined carbs. So we're talking about pasta, bread. If it comes in a box or a can, it's probably not worth putting in your body. Although sardines come in a can, they're okay. You just got to do a little research. Refined sugars.
Although we watched another good video that said all sugars are kind of bad. You're just going from one thing to another to feed your addiction.
That was Dr. Hyman.
And Honey was like one of the things that he did put up there, but because it had the added benefits of pollens and
He was on the
antibacterials.
fence.
Yeah, he believed no sugar was a good sugar. You were just feeding your addiction with another
With
sugar.
And so if you're buying honey that is crystal clear, that's not a good honey. If you're buying honey and it's, what's the one we get around
We
here?
actually we get a unfiltered honey, and our honey actually is like a milky white, and we get it at the
Isley's, which is local, and we get it from Jaeger's, which is local.
and we get the one at the nutritional store, and
What's
that's the one that's Isley's, I believe, and
Isley's.
it's looks like milk.
Yeah, it doesn't look like honey
No,
at
and
all.
it's so good, and it's not super sweet. It's delicious. And somebody asked, "What's the best way to eat salmon?"
With a fork in your mouth. You know what?
You
It's-
can't go wrong with good salmon. Any way you make it, as long as you're using good oils. Just don't bread it.
It's such the way I like it, believe it or not, is I like it raw, and we put it on, we use it with a hollandaise sauce, and we make,
Oh, our little Benedicts.
yeah, salmon eggs Benedict.
And believe it or not, our 9-year-old eats raw salmon, and our 20-year-old, they love it.
Yeah, and so if you can get a good wild caught Nova Scotia smoked salmon, that adds a little flavor to it. Just go buy raw salmon and smoke it yourself. Low heat so you don't denature the omega-3s.
Cream
But-
cheese, green
Yeah.
onions, capers, roll it up together. So good.
Yep, season it up. There's so much flavor to be had with cooking your stuff low and not just making hockey pucks out of it or whatever else.
Sous vide. He likes to
You-
sous vide things. I don't
Sous-
like the texture, but it is delicious.
Yeah, when you sous vide stuff, make sure you get bags that aren't plastic, because that will leach hormones into it. But we use that hollandaise sauce. You know, we make our own, and it doesn't take long, and it's fabulous. We covered the keto diet. This is nutrition, high quality proteins, grass-fed animals, and you can, the Bearded Butchers are on YouTube, and
They're
just go Google the Bearded Butchers and grass-fed versus conventionally fed. You can see a difference in the meat. And not only can you see a difference in the meat, you can see a difference in the size of the animals. In animals that are conventionally raised and given corn, they get much larger, and the fat's marbled in the meat, and the omega-6 profile in those, and I'm not saying that they're not tasty, they are. But what I am saying is when you eat those as a regular, then you throw off your omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, and you start to have problems. So high quality proteins, lots of fiber, and work your way up. So there is a Dr. Terry Walls who wrote the book called The Walls Protocol, and she gets 80 to 100 grams of fiber a day. And so let's take a moment. What does the fiber do? So here's something that was kind of mind-blowing to me. Breast milk. Breast milk has human oligosaccharides or something like that, HMOs. I forget what it is, but they're HMOs in breast milk.
Good morning, Ruth.
And the HMO in breast milk is not digestible by the stomach, by the human being. It's digestible by the bacteria in the gut. Why is that important? So here's something that has just really been coming up very recently all the time in the clinic. When does our microbiome get seeded? And how important is the microbiome? And how does it deal with triglycerides and insulin and sugar? because it's
Oh,
the
Ruth
bac-
said she can't hear. Can everybody else hear? I just wanna make sure it's not us.
I'm still going. Did we get unplugged? I don't know.
I don't know, Ruth. Is everybody else hearing okay?
So HMOs feed our bacteria. Where do those bacteria come from? The bacteria come from mom and actually grandma, because when you pass through the birth canal, you get swabbed with the cecum and you get swabbed with the vaginal area, and that comes through into the mouth.
Have I accidentally knocked something off? Cause, sorry guys.
Here you go. We'll just go to the internal mic. Can you hear
us
now? Can you hear me now? One of these days.
We're gonna get this right one day. But we
We're
do
just
have,
gonna have to hire an AV
we
guy.
do have a lot of fun trying.
So, the oligosaccharides in breast milk feed the bacteria that we get from mom when we pass through the birth canal. The more diverse and the more species you
Oh,
have
awesome, thank you.
of these bacteria, guess what? The more energy they need. So the more carbohydrates you can have, the more, I don't want to say sugars you can have, but basically you can increase your
Melissa.
caloric burn by 10% by
Oh,
increasing
perfect,
your
Michaela, thank
microbiome.
you.
And you also increase your health, you also increase your enzymes, you help your hormones. So that's why fiber is important. Fiber doesn't feed the human portion, fiber feeds the bacteria portion. And so if we look at DNA, how important is fiber and how important is it to feed the gut buddies?
And this is fascinating to me. So we eat fiber not for necessarily for us, but the fiber goes through and gets into our small intestines and then our large intestines, and it feeds those bacteria.
So when we look at DNA, how much of our DNA is human? How much of our DNA is bacterial? Bacterial/viri.
Less than 2% is human. Is that right?
We're a little more than that. We're roughly, depending on who you read, human, we're 10% DNA, or our DNA composes 10% human DNA. The other 90% is bacterial and viri. So when you're looking at this, when you eat this, that feeds this. And so it can get it from collagen. So collagen is a type of fibrous matrix. And the body can use that. But you have to have fiber to feed that. What happens to people who don't get a lot of fiber? They have all kinds of digestive issues. They get diarrhea, and then they have constipation, and then they get diarrhea, and then they have constipation, and they ebb and flow back and forth. I don't get diarrhea
Hey,
unless I
Carly.
have eaten something horrible. Or horrible for me, and it's
Hi, Gabe.
poisoned me in some way, shape, or form. All right, so that's nutrition. Goodness, I lost my train of thought. Nutritional density, organ meats, liver, make some pate. Dr. Walls has an absolutely fabulous. How many of you guys are interested in us actually taking this home and making some dishes?
What would you like to make?
Yeah,
What would you like to see us make?
Yeah, if you want us to make something, just fire away, tell us what you want, and we'll take the circus on the road and take it home, and we'll make something there, or we'll make something at the, can't do it at the clinic, so the clinic's broke. So we'll take it to the house, and we'll make it there. Number 3, third pillar,
We have a lot of fun cooking. It's really fun.
radio and dance around because
Yeah,
we'll
we
probably
do like to
break
dance around in the kitchen, but
RIAA, whatever it is.
we don't own the rights to this music.
Yeah, no. So triglycerides, your muscles are independent glucose disposal units. So when you are exercising, you want to really think about getting the legs into it, getting the butt into it, getting the big movers in the core. So Dr. Attia, who is a great lipidologist, talks about 3 times a week doing zone 2 training. I just hooked up with Jeffrey Klein out of New York, and he set my zone 2 levels for my bike. And I gotta go do a run test. I hate running. I don't do triathlons anymore because I hate running. And so, but I'm going to do my zone 2 test for running and set those in my heart rate monitor, because we should do zone 2 training 3 times a week at about 45 minutes to an hour. And that just really works the cardiovascular system. And my zone 2 puts me at like 144 beats. My resting heart rate ranges between 38 and 42 beats a minute. And going up to 144 is a lot of work, especially on a bike. I can't wait to see what the running is. But the other part of that is 2 to 3 times
Hi,
a
Rhonda.
week of high intensity interval training. So you can do this at home. You can start to see my old CrossFit coach, Jace Robinson, used to program no equipment workout WODs, and one of my no equipment workout WOD was 300 air squats, as fast as possible. Now, this I like because it works on stability too. The older we get, the more we need to be stable. The more you need to be stable, the more you need to have core and trunk and everything else. My shoes don't have any lift on them, and it's even better if you take off your shoes. And I just love the air squat because the air squat is something that works on stability. You want to try to remain as erect as possible. You get your feet about hip width apart, screw them into the ground, and when you go down, you want the knees to track out. So if you watch my knees, as I pull my feet in, it creates the arch underneath the foot, and then you drop down into the squat. That was horrible. Much better. And you keep those heels on the ground, and you come back up. And you do that, you can use a ball, but you really want to keep that back as straight as possible, and boom, and boom. And then you get it to where you time it. And you want to know how fast can you do 300 air squats. And after about 20 or 30, you're going to start doing this because the legs get heavy and the legs catch fire. If you don't have the knees to do that, feet out away from the wall, sit down into a squat, and try to stay there for a minute. And then try to stay there for 2 minutes. And let the legs catch fire. Because that's the whole point of this. Glucose disposal. When you do zone 2, your body takes the triglycerides and breaks them down into its 3 fatty acids. And because you are not going into the glycolytic stage, you will primarily use these. So you're gonna burn the triglycerides up. And that's what you wanna do. When you're using high intensity interval training, remember you wanna get gassed. You want to work out hard and fast. So, get a kettlebell. And if you don't know how to use a kettlebell, go onto the internet. If you're in Columbus, go to a CrossFit gym. I like Death Proof CrossFit. Jace is a wonderful coach. There's Ripcord. I've never been to Farrell's, so I don't know. And then they have all the equipment at Total Fit. If you're in North Vernon, get a gym membership and go see one of the trainers down at Anytime Fitness. I don't know much about the full body fitness that's next to Taco Bell. I did actually get my girls a month's membership tryout to there for stocking stuffers, so we'll see how that goes. But pick 3 exercises, and you want to go through those 3 exercises as fast as possible. So our warm-up at CrossFit was usually a cross between air squats,
Hi, Teresa.
push-ups, banded pull-ups, something like that. And you did it for 6 minutes, every minute on the minute. And so you can do a 20-minute workout, and you can sit here and say, I'm going to do push-ups, I'm going to do air squats, and I'm going to do kettlebell swings. And as we go every minute on the minute, what will happen is you will have to switch between these very quickly. Do not stop and rest. The idea is to get gassed. And so that's what you do. This is actually going to spike your blood sugar, believe it or not, because your load is going to be such that you demand more. And so my blood sugars, when I wore the constant glucose monitor, when I did the high intensity interval training, and we did the every minute on a minute, and we hit it hard, and by the end of it you you're laying on the ground, blood sugars went through the roof because the demand is high. And your triglycerides, your free fatty acids can't keep up with the demand. And so this is when you start to also build that, what we call aerobic fitness or anaerobic fitness, and the mitochondria, which is the thing that we all have to take care of, the mitochondria becomes more proficient. And that's very important. And his little membrane, guess what his little membrane requires? Omega-3 fatty acids. So if you're not giving the mitochondria good things, they die. And if you're not doing, so with the nutrition, ketogenic diet, you're wanting to control insulin. Let's go back to intermittent fasting or time-restricted feeding. I like this. This is what I do. I typically I try to have my last meal of the day at 6, and I typically wait until 1 o'clock the next day to actually eat. Doesn't screw with my blood sugars, and then, as you can see, I eat between 6 and 1, I fast from here to here, and from here to here I eat. And so what that ends up doing is that puts us at basically 21 hours in a fasted state, giving insulin a rest, letting cellular apoptosis and autophagy happen as much as we can. So, and trust me, you can fast. It's
Just takes practice.
It's what we used to do.
Hello, Josh.
So, nutrition. We've done the movement. Have fun with exercise. Pick things you don't like to do. I hate to do pull-ups. And so when I do pull-ups, I do a banded pull-up. There's no shame in getting assistance. And as you do a banded pull-up, then you get stronger, and you go from a big band to a smaller band to no band. And so, but those are the things you want to do. And it's okay to hurt. It's a good hurt. It's a hurt that is a homeostatic hurt. And that hurt will allow you to grow as when you're doing zone 2, you can stabilize and you can heal. And that's the whole thing. We want stability. You want to be able to, well, I mean, if you're 50 years old and you can't get down to receive a child, well, then you're not going to make a very good grandparent, great-grandparent. Dr. Attia says you should be able to take a 40-pound kettlebell and do goblet squats with a 40-pound kettlebell, because that child that you want to play with and interact with can't come to your level. You have to get to their level. So if you can get down to their level, and you can get down here and play with them, what's the next thing you need to be able to do?
Gotta get up.
Gotta get up. And what is one of the things that puts people into the nursing home the fastest? They can't get off the pot. And if you can't get off the pot, you gotta call the ambulance or a friend, and they get to come in and see you on the toilet. And nobody wants that. So you gotta be able to get up with at least one point of contact, or less if you can't. So if you can get up without any points of contact, you're pretty good to go. But if you use a one point of contact, you're still going to be pretty good to go.
You can use a door frame to help stabilize yourself.
Oh yeah, while you're learning to
While
do
you're
squats, while
Sorry
you're learning
about
to
the
do
bright light,
squats, you can grab the door
Hi,
frame,
Kathy.
go down if you're going to fall backwards. But you see how that helps keep my back straighter, because I don't have to worry about falling backwards so much. You know, don't neglect the upper body. Do push-ups. If you have high insulin levels, be careful, because the shoulders tend to like insulin. And not Dr. Bredesen. Oh, he's the doc that was a type 1 diabetic. He wrote a whole book on diabetes, but he found that the first thing that happens to his diabetics that he knew was their shoulders came out. So something to be very conscious of is when you're doing push-ups, do more of the military style of push-up and keep your hands in close. You want to try to rotate those elbows around like that. You don't want to wing out here, because that's a lot of stress on the shoulders. If you do this, this is a fairly stable way to do a push-up, and you just want to be able to do that. And that keeps those arms in and protected. It keeps the shoulders protected. Movement. Get out, go for a walk. Get in the woods. Take your shoes off. Let your feet hit the dirt.
It's called grounding. It's good for you.
Anybody want any ideas on? I mean, move. The more you move, the more energy you burn. The more you depend on the muscles to do what they are designed to do. What's that?
They're saying good stuff. So good. Thank you.
It's always good to have a buddy to go along, because it just makes it more fun.
Yeah, we at least get our good walk in twice a week, although yesterday
Bathroom
this
remodel has kind of put
Yeah.
a damper on that.
broken water pipe, we had to gut a bathroom. So Trevor gets to do what he does best and tear stuff up. We have fun.
Last but not least is community. Uh-oh. I might have just foobarred my
There
pen.
you go. It's showing up.
Why is community important? There are actually studies that show that if you are in a healthy community, you will be healthy. If you are out of shape, diabetic, obese, and you go and you move to a community that isn't, you actually turn that way. And they have made all the connections between microbiome and between, it's just generally a healthier environment. The food places there are typically better than the typical McDonald's, Wendy's, Taco Bell. And I'm not trying to knock those people out of jobs, you know. I just think that we can do better when we want to pick out a fast food joint. And so community is actually key, because when you're down, you have those people to say, instead of, oh, I'll bring over a 6-pack and we'll sit there and drown our sorrows, they say, hey, hop on the bike and let's go hit the trails, you know, let's go do something constructive and get outside and bring our spirits up, because that's more constructive. Once again, that's that layering of healthy habits and going from there. And I get it. There are times when people have struggles and they're going to turn to things that aren't good and that actually hurt. But there comes a point in time when we all realize, oh, that's not good. And so we got to get away from it. You know, I make a wicked Long Island iced tea, and that's not because I had the recipe on hand. So community is vitally important. You know, we're thinking when we retire, don't want to scare the patients, but we're thinking when we retire, you know, we're going to go someplace sunny, so our vitamin D is easier to get. We want to go someplace by the sea so that we have good fresh seafood. She wants to do travel nursing. So there's all kinds of things to do with this. And, you know, that's the way we look at it. And this is the way we look at it. This is the way that when we have arguments, it's okay, let's settle down and let's not, you know, get emotional. Let's think about this. Let's use that little sliver of brain that allows us to think about this and come to a consensus. Not a I'm right and you're wrong. Well, okay, let's really think about this. And sometimes I'm the one that has the better idea and we go with it. Sometimes she's the one with the better idea and we go with it. There's no shame. So that's how to modify triglycerides. And when you modify the triglycerides that way, you're actually going to layer in ways to modify your cholesterol. And you're going to modify your overall health. And you're going to modify your sympathetic tone. And you're going to modify your blood pressure. And we are always here to help. I mean, that's why Integrated Health of Indiana exists. That's why I want to have an operational regenerative farm. So, you know what, if you're diabetic and you need to get away, you can go there, you can work out in the sun, you can eat what's really good food, and you can start to see how you can look at your old life and start to change that so that it's healthy for you. Because, I mean, let's face it, if all you do every day is get up, go to work, come home, drink a beer, go to bed, rinse and repeat, to me, that's not much of a life. And I believe we're called to have an impact, and we're called to have an impact on others. And if somebody's doing better than you can look at them and start to model what they do, and you'll be doing better. If somebody is doing worse than you and they reach out to you and they want help, then we're obligated to help each other as best we can. And so once again, yeah, that's why Integrated Health of Indiana exists. That's why I keep continuing my education, so that I can try to help as many people as I can. And with that being said,
Well, I have something to add to this, because I'm just looking at this too on the board.
ask away.
And Oh, it's not really a question, it's just comments. So this one actually was about triglycerides, but you know, you talked about relationships and things, but those 4 pillars up there, if you don't have problems with your triglycerides, those actually are wonderful things. So you sleep good if you have a significant other, and you get good nutrition, but more importantly, you're spending time in the kitchen with those people, creating good nutrition, and you're getting out
And
and you're
community.
moving with them and you're walking, you reconnect, if you don't get on each other's nerves as much, you get to talk, and that is all good things.
Well, once again, it's a system, and it's an easy system. And so, as with anything, the easier the system, the easier it is to implement. The easier it is to implement, the more you're likely you are to stick with it. And if you can't stick with it, then you have to make it your own, and you know, there's
Well, if that decreases stress, and that goes back and ties back into your triglycerides, it builds your base strong, and it's just good stuff.
Yep.
So what are we going to talk about next week? We have a lot of fun doing this. We're getting better. We're going to get better.
Is there anybody on there that has a suggestion or
Or we can cook.
are they having a problem that they are seeking out? Do they want us to
We can
cook?
talk and cook all at the same time.
Oh yeah. I'm a motor mouth.
We make a big mess, but
I'm
we're
a
good with it.
Bergmeyer. Bergmeyers can talk.
And I just butt in, but I like to talk too.
So what could we do next week? I mean, the funny thing is we covered so many things there. The PCOS. Well, you know what? Let's talk about hormones. And
We'll just take it to the kitchen and make something good.
yeah, we'll make, if somebody has a suggestion of something they would like us to make, or if somebody is having a health challenge and would like to know if I had that health challenge, what would I eat? We can show something that we would eat. Like I said, it's not a script. I'm not telling you what to do. These are just the things that I do and we do. And it has been healthy for us and continues to bring us good health. So next week, hormones, and I guess we'll be in the kitchen.
So thanks for joining us, friends. We do enjoy it, and hope we see y'all next week. So we will leave it there, and be careful, good luck, and be healthy.
Thank you for taking this time to look into the health of you and your loved ones. This broadcast does not constitute a doctor-patient relationship. It is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not a replacement or substitute for care. If you are having issues, please seek a qualified professional trained in functional medicine. We would be happy to be of assistance with both in-person and virtual consultations. Thank you.